Hi, I'm Eleanor, and welcome to this week's episode of the Intuition Lab. This week, I'm going to talk about your intuitive calendar and when your new year actually begins, when you're most ready for a fresh start, not what the calendar says or what other people around you say, but when do you truly feel that your new year starts? So, let's talk about it. It's September as of this recording, and for many of us, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, it is the beginning of autumn. Well, in about a week here, kids have been back in school for a few days, and maybe rhythms just naturally reset around the school calendar for many of us. I know for years, especially because a few years after graduating from college, I did work for a university. My year pretty much revolved around the school year. So it would start in September, end in June, and the rest of the time in between would be a sort of no man's land. But I really thought of my new year restarting on September 1st. For other people, especially if you work on taxes or in the tax industry, your new year might revolve around fiscal guidelines. Or if you're in a nonprofit, businesses, nonprofits often have um, New Year's that don't coincide with the calendar, like June 30th or September 30th or something like that. Maybe you work for a seasonal business. Perhaps you work at a haunted house so that your October and the run up to it is flat out. Or perhaps you have a business that focuses around Christmas and end of year holidays. So your year probably revolves around December. Maybe that's the beginning of your new year. If you work on weddings in whatever capacity, though this is somewhat changing with people getting married year round and not just focusing on the warmer spring and summer months into early autumn. Um, Maybe your year focuses around the time between June and the beginning of October when it seems like, anyhow, most marriages occur. You know, what works best for you? I mean, we're all familiar with starting over on January 1st and, start of a calendar year, and it sounds like a great time. But what if your natural cycles aren't aligned to starting over on January 1st? What would be the best time for you to start over? You know, this is where your intuition comes into play. You, with a little bit of introspection, or maybe you already know what your natural cycles are like. Do you feel most energized beginning of January? Many people feel more energized in spring and summer. Some of us, I would say myself included, get a burst of energy in the fall. Perhaps some people really come alive in winter. That is sort of true for me, in that I feel like my new year starts around my birthday. But we all have our own natural rhythm. If you tune into your intuition and just look at the previous performance over your life, what time of year do you feel most energized or most like making a new start? You might have a lot of energy in the summer, but maybe you're just focused on having fun in whatever capacity that looks like. You know, this is where you tune into your intuition and ask, what time of the year is it best for me to make a fresh start? And listen to what you hear and the signs you receive, because when we work in alignment with our natural energy, that is when we are able to make meaningful change, to start projects that we can see through to completion with the drive and the energy and just the sense of joy about it that you can feel when you are in alignment with your own natural cycles. And I also will bring up, though I mentioned it about me, some of us think that our new year starts around our birthday. And there are many schools of thought about this, but I like it. You start the year with your special day, celebrating your birthday, if that's what you do. And then you have sort of, I won't call it an arbitrary, but a more natural unfolding of beginning another life cycle, literally and figuratively. But what's important here is to notice your patterns, work with them. Being attuned to your intuition can go hand in hand with nature, natural rhythms, especially I mentioned a few other lines of work that are tied to a calendar date, but it can also be seasonal if you work in agriculture. Obviously, you have a growing season and a fallow season. If you work, let's say you work at a ski resort, your new year probably begins in a sense when they first start making snow and the lifts open, or if you work at a ski resort where they don't make snow, when you get significant snowfall. If you do outdoor work, obviously you are going to have, unless you are in a location where it is warm and temperate year round, either you will have a work stoppage or the nature of your work will change. For example, where I live, there are many people who do landscaping who switch over to shoveling and road plowing in the inclement months. So there is a seasonality to life. There's also a seasonality to your energy. And the key is knowing, when is it the right time for me to make a change? When am I most apt to embark on a path of renewal? Because when you do this, when you work with that sense of being ready to change, that is when your aligned changes have, well, one, the greatest chance of success, and you're actually going to feel like, yes, not only do I have the energy, but I have the motivation, I have the desire. It just feels right to be doing this right now. And this is all in the service of using your intuition to really set yourself up for your version of success. Because when we do this, there's less beating yourself up. So let's say you decide first week of January, I'm going to use the most cliched one. I'm going to start working out and eating healthier. But of course, especially where I live, it's the coldest part of the year. Maybe you don't want to go outside. Maybe you can't go outside. Maybe you're just cold and you want a bowl of some sort of stew or a bowl of pasta because it's miserable out. And then by the end of January, you've maybe gone to the gym twice and maybe you've even gained some weight. That's not really setting yourself up for that version of success. Instead, if you know that you really start to feel like you are ready to take action in, say, I don't know, April or May, it's better to just say, well, I will just sort of do what I can now and start in earnest then. And I know there's a lot of talk around seize the day, do it now. And sometimes that's the case, but more often than not, you are acting out of sync with who you are and when you are meant to act. This calls for a lot of self-knowledge. Do you generally hibernate from November through May? you know, is it an active hibernation or you just stay inside? Well, then maybe you can adapt your goals to be done inside. Maybe you can work on lots of indoor projects if you know that, going for a 5 mile walk outside every day in all weather isn't your thing. You have a way to prepare. Either you can pace where you live or get a walking pad or find a place with a treadmill that you can use. And I'm using the exercise example because it's sort of near and dear to my heart right now. But knowing the truth of your internal cycles can allow you to craft a life based on this specific type of alignment so that you are not trying to force an issue before it is ready. But I will also like to state that change, your new year can start today if that's what you want. If you feel this is my time to make a change, do it. But don't be beholden to an arbitrary date on the calendar. You have to move when you really feel called to, when your intuition tells you that it is time to take action. And it's September now, I've said that before where I am, but you can still make a fresh start. Like I said, for me, I feel that in the fall, my energies are focused on shedding, preparing for the winter, coming up. But I just feel a renewed sense of purpose in the fall. And I don't know if any of you feel that way. I'd love to hear your feedback. But it's important for us to take action when we feel guided to. And as much as you can, limit the influence of outside sources. And one thing I will say is that I have learned, for me personally, that there are times when I have exceedingly low energy, or I used to suffer from SAD, seasonal affective disorder, and I still use a happy lamp when, we have less daylight. If you can, using your intuition, plan ahead, you can get things done and prepare, like start working on projects so that you can either take no or minimal action during your, as I would call them, dormant periods. So I hope this helps. I still encourage you to make plans, but whether or not your planner starts on October or November 1st or January 1st, it is up to you. So I hope this helps. I am sending you so much love. If you would like to learn more about how to follow your intuition and your natural cycles to set yourself up for success in achieving your goals, I invite you to sign up for my Pathfinders community that is launching on the 25th of this month, September. It will be Telegram based, where I will have weekly prompts and chats that I provide daily feedback on to help you make big decisions, hear your intuition, live life intuitively. If you are struggling to make a big decision and you feel that you would like to be in a community of other people who are also in the midst of big changes, but maybe can't necessarily share what you're going through with the people around you, I invite you to join this free community. And I will talk to you all next week. Bye.